The closing plenary session with our global speakers moderated by Martin Brynskov. So Martin, please come to the stage.
Thank you, Davor, and thank you everyone for staying along. It's a long day, like I said in the beginning of the standardization session, since smart cities and communities is basically everyone and everything. Our apologies for trying to cramping it into one day. So we now have, as I said, the almost closing, so the seminar style closing. The reception will be right outside afterwards. Please join us. What we usually have in the closing session is a more like global outlook. So I'm very happy to have with us here today Alex from the UN, the ITUT, from TM Forum, Joann presenting, and Paul picking up all the hard questions afterwards in the panel discussion. Ulrich from the FIWARE Foundation, thank you for hurrying back from India to be with us here. Indeed, the global, you can almost see the trails coming into the room from the people gathered here. And Shigehiro from the World Economic Forum Center for the Fourth Industrial Revolution in Japan. So I invite you now to take the stage and give your view on things and, of course, your priorities in the current state of affairs. I will say that in the program we had also put reporting from some of the sessions. I think in the interest of time we should focus on the global perspective here. So we will put up the slides and the small session reports on the website. The recorded sessions will also be available there as a shared resource for reflection later and to take into your work. Also, we have in the program a welcome to the new cities. Well, I would like to see if any of the new cities are in the room, those who have joined the OASC since last time, because then I would like to invite an applause for them on stage. Since this is not a case, I think we should give the applause. Still. So we are looking, like I said in the beginning, actually into a quite interesting time globally, because there's such a big demand for understanding what is going on with the digital transformation. So we also as OASC are looking to how can we actually embrace this? How do you go from 100 to 2,000 members? I mean, the UN is used to this kind of scale. The other organizations here in the panel are used to this kind of scale. We need to learn. So we are also here to listen. What are the conversations that are reflected from the global track into here, and indeed from the global grounds? So Alex, I invite you to take the floor. Please, how do you see things?
Okay, let me start by thanking the organizers for giving us the opportunity to express the views of ITU on this. How much time do I have? Okay. I'm going to try to tell you a story. One thing which is bringing all of us here together is about connected smart cities. A city means different things to different people. Last year I started, I think May, I was in Kigali for Transform Africa Summit. And of course we had discussions on smart cities. And then I went to Dubai in November. Again, different kind of a smart city. And I ended the year sometime in Wuxi, but before that I was in Beijing, then Shenzhen, then Wuxi. In Wuxi, we had a big forum on smart cities. And one of the things that we find interesting is that a city means different things to different people. So I'm quite privileged to be here because I think you are having a discussion which is trying to identify some of the common elements which would be hopefully applicable to cities globally. You might be asking yourself, digital object architecture, smart cities, startups. What is this all about? This is like a tool. We don't have sound. Normally we should have sound, right? If we don't have sound, it's a 2-minute video. I will fast forward it because you needed to hear what these images are basically saying. But I'll summarize it for you, and the video would be presented somewhere outside. So if you don't get this, don't bother about this too much. It's all about interoperability. This morning session, I heard something about some of the challenges that we need to address. You know, if you leave Geneva like myself, you come here to Brussels, do you get the same understanding of what smartness is all about? Do you get the same understanding of what it means to be a connected city? You hear the sound? No, don't worry too much about it, even if it doesn't.
Using a globally resolvable and secure identifier called a handle. Each handle.
Oh, okay. Don't worry.
The digital object architecture is an advanced open architecture for information management, which can enhance technologies such as machine learning, IoT, and blockchain. The explosive growth of the internet has made more information available than ever before. Access to big data and interactions between machines and IoT devices are currently limited because their data and access interfaces are not readily interoperable. Imagine a world where all people, machines, data and things can seamlessly interoperate in a secure, trusted and persistent manner. Welcome to the Digital Object Architecture, a distributed, scalable and secure information management architecture for the Internet and emerging technologies such as big data, IoT and blockchain. A digital object, DO for short, is uniquely identified using a globally resolvable and secure identifier called a handle. Each handle resolves into information about its DO, such as its location, estate metadata. The DO interface protocol, DOIP for short, is the protocol used to interact with any DO by simply specifying its handle ID and the handle ID of the operation to perform on it. The function of a DO is defined by the list of operation IDs it can perform. For instance, a DO that can perform repository operations is a digital object repository. And a DO that can perform registry operations is a digital object registry. Each DO has an extensible set of system and user-specified attributes, such as metadata, public keys, access controls, authentication, integrity information, and references to other DOs. A DO has any number of data elements that can consist of any type of data, ranging from simple to the complex, and from static to real-time computed data. All DO operations and data types are themselves DOs. They can be created by anyone, discovered and reused globally within any DO.
Okay, basically one of the challenges that we are trying to address as an organization is we are an organization which has 193 member states. So when we look at a city, we have to look at, does it mean the same thing to everybody? We have more than 800 of the industry players, the biggest companies from Google to Microsoft to IBM. We need to look at how do we move some of these solutions into the countries. And one of the things that we were doing I talked about Kigali because it's a reason for that. We brought together some of the startups. We told them, well, everybody's talking about fourth industrial revolution. If we have to have your cities connected, Kigali, if we have to make it smart, people have to be involved. It cannot just be technology that is imported. It has to be like today, you know, people contribute in making the cities smart by understanding the technologies. We talk about the fourth industrial revolution. This technology should be in the hands of everybody so that they'll be able to do specific things. We had a hackathon in May in Kigali, and after training them, so you get young people who are part of the city of Kigali. You train them on technologies like artificial intelligence, blockchain, and you tell them, okay, look at a problem that you need to solve within your community. Come up with software, algorithms, and then we would see which one would win. So we went through the process, and we got some of the, we got 3 finalists. And when I was flying back from Kigali, getting back to Geneva, I asked myself, what do we do with these guys? We can't just leave them there. So we said we're going to come up with a way to take them from learning the technology. I'm talking about young people. Some of them did not yet have their degrees. But we wanted them to be part of their local community, to participate in building this community, because it has to come also from the grassroots. These technologies have to get into the hands of those who are living in the place. They have to use them today as they use the internet for certain things to build some of the applications. So the whole concept of this smart incubator is, you see it up there, is how we try to assist startups to give them the necessary skills so that they would be able to perform, they'll be able to set up their own companies. We talk a lot about the digital transformation. Sometimes we say, these tools are, they're going to change society, but society for us is 193 countries. It has to be everywhere. We talk about global, indiscriminate, and interoperable standards. And we also talk about, for the ITU at least, one of our main objectives is how to increase the benefits of technologies to enhance the livelihoods of mankind. At the end of the day, we need to see how the technologies change people's lives. So this is also linked to the Sustainable Development Goals. This incubator activity, this initiative, it's a multi-stakeholder activity, which is, we're looking at foundations, academia, developing countries. I'm going to go through it really fast. I've been discussing with some potential partners, and when we have the opportunity to discuss, maybe after this, I'll be able to go into detail. So if there are things that don't make too much sense here because I'm going fast, don't worry about it. We can hook up, we can be connected online and follow up this. We have the SDGs. We have to see how we can get some of these technologies, some of these services to work towards meeting the Sustainable Development Goals. Upcoming events, which could be areas where you would see how we go into the next level of this. We have some of the events of ITU where we are going to, talk a lot about the incubator. The whole thing is we need to try to get active participation of those who are in a community. We need to have people understand that not all smart and connected cities should be like Dubai. Many years back when I was shown the maquette or the plan of Dubai 2020, maybe some 15 years back, I didn't believe, I said it's not possible for you to do that. 2012, I was in Dubai, and I was there again, as I mentioned, some months back, and you could see what has happened. But not every city would be like Dubai. And I think what is important is we need to try to empower those who are in these local communities to create smart, connected cities within the context of what that city means to them. Because one of the things which we have to deal with, I talk about China. I went to 3 cities in China. One had 22 million. It's also part of the list of cities which are working on the basis of ITU's key performance indicators for smart cities. The other one had 17.5, Shenzhen. And then I went to Wuxi, which is considering itself as the smartest city. I looked at quite a number of applications. But at the same time, we have a member state, which is Cook Islands. Islands, S, plural. But the whole population of that country is 12,000 people. So you can see that a city means totally different thing to them. But that's the member state of ITU. We need to find a way to be able to make sure that what we discuss is also relevant to the Cook Island, as it is to China. So what we are going to try to do is see how we can explain further the possibilities of us to be able to create some concrete follow-up actions so that the discussions that we have here, my view is that what you are discussing here is something that we should try to see how to globalize it, and we are there to try to work with you and to work with all those who are also engaged in this to see how we can extend some of the experiences that you have got here so that they can be of benefit to other countries. So those are the 4 areas that we focus on: technical know-how, business development, intellectual property. There's a lot of things I can talk about that, but I don't have too much time to go into the details. That's why I'm discussing this here. If you want, if you're interested, you let us know. I'm here with my colleague, Anna Maria. She's actually the expert in the incubator thing, but I would just like again to thank all of you and to end this presentation at this point, and I'll be available at some point in time if you have any questions. Thank you.
Alex, I was in Durban when you launched this, and it's really interesting to see how the analysis unfolds of what is needed. The smart ABC, so artificial intelligence, banking, and cities, are pillars in your intervention, very, very inspiring. Also, we discussed in the workshop yesterday with the Hungarian colleagues, because the telecom world is now coming up in Budapest. So I think there are many touch points where we can be very practical and bring people together. So thank you for coming and joining your ideas and sharing them with the audience here. Okay, I invite Joann from a different perspective, but footprint-wise also global, from TM Forum. So please, Joann, share your views. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. My name is Joann O'Brien. I am the Vice President of Ecosystems and Labs at TM Forum. I am not Paul Wilson. Paul Wilson, however, is here and will take the questions as part of the panel after the talk. So it's my great pleasure to be with you today and to share some of the work that we've been doing with the community over the past about 5 years now. So next slide, please. I'm expecting everything to be automated today, aren't I? So, TM Forum Smart City Program, we purposely designed our program around Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And that's really because at the end of the day, it's about the citizens, the individuals in the city, achieving their full self-actualization by living in your city. So the city, it all has to be designed around the individual, the people in the city. And the cities have always been a platform, right? That's what they are. People congregate there to work, to live, to educate, to share resources, and to be a great place, to communicate and have fun. But, now we're evolving into digital cities, smart cities. And this is where the work of the forum and the standards of the forum have participated, where we've been participating with the community over a number of years now. And really, one of the big things, connectivity obviously is, an essential aspect of a smart city. That's why we put that at the very bottom. It's not so much that it doesn't matter, it's that you have to have it. It's assumed, it's necessary before you can really do or achieve smart, intelligent cities. And our expectation, right, we really work at the assumption that 5G will be rolled out over the next few years. We've been working with, in our more technical programs, we work with a number of organizations on the standards and the efficient exposure of 5G services and the 5G ultra reliability and things like that allow you to build smart services. But that's kind of assumed in the context of the types of things that we do in our smart city program. We're looking then at We've been running what we call a Catalyst proof of concept project over the past probably 3 years now. It's called the Connected Citizen Catalyst. Here we've been looking at the platform of a city and how to realize the different types of services, essentially as a plug and play, where you expose through standardized interfaces and adopt any type of services into that platform. Now, where that program is that really they're starting their first real deployments in cities right now, but also what they're looking at is how do we break down the silos of data? How do we, create the horizontal integration of services that we all know can be realized when you move into the whole ecosystem context. And with that regard, where we are is that we're working with FIWARE in our collaboration on the Front Runner initiative and the OASC to harmonize the data models that we've developed. So the TM-Forum Open APIs, there's over 54 APIs, all publicly available. Anybody can use them. You're more than welcome. And each API has a data model. And we're looking to harmonize those data models so that we can really, truly achieve the ultimate ambition of which is to have service agnostic, technology agnostic, a core set of APIs that operationally manage any type of service. And they've been designed in that way. For the technical people in our team here, we've purposely invested in things like polymorphic behavior to allow the full dynamic capability of a single API to manage any type of service. We heard earlier this morning companies talking about we need to achieve this separation of concern between the application and the data. In order to do that, you need to embed the polymorphic behavior into your APIs. And we have achieved that across all of our APIs now today. So in order to move towards a full city as a data platform, that's what has to happen. We have to break down the silos of data. And and that becomes, when you do that, when we've achieved that, let's say we've moved past that point, imagine the future, well then you can really start to apply things like artificial intelligence, not to siloed data lakes, but across different ecosystems. And then you move from being a city where you have, being a great place to live, a great place to learn, great place to work, but then you really become a learning city, a city where the actual managers of the city have a deeper insights into how citizens are actually using the services of the city. And that's really where we see us going with regards to data. However, that gets very tricky, right? It gets very tricky from a governance perspective, never mind technologically. Trust is obviously a huge factor. So you have to build in privacy by design. You have to build in and adhere to all of the principles of human rights, not to mention all the GDPR aspects. And here, that's where what we call the city as a city manifesto comes into play. The TM-Forum City Manifesto was designed very much aligns with the principles of human rights, the principles of city sustainability, creating the circular economy, being a great place to live, a great place to work, and all of that. And over 180 cities and companies have signed that. And what they mean by that is that they're committing to work together to achieve smart city solutions, but under the principles of the Smart City Manifesto. And that's what's really important, that we are all adhering to the same principles behind what we're doing. And then as we continue in that mode, as we move up the hierarchy, we get to a point where we're really into ecosystem curation. When we can actually seamlessly aggregate data from across different types of services, you really are into a point of curation of ecosystems at that point. We are a bit away from that at this stage yet. And that's what we, beyond that is where we really believe urban actualization can be achieved. Other types of things that we're doing is the Smart City benchmarking model. We'll have a new version of that out in this year, 2019. And that is a tool that cities can use to assess where they are on their digital transformation journey, but also then benchmark that against other types of cities. and of course the data model work that we've been doing. So these things are the main things that TM Forum is up to, in collaboration with OASC, in collaboration with FIWARE, and lots of other cities and companies around the world. So we create proof of concept projects, we demonstrate them at our events, and really it's all about not only being, creating cities that are a great place to live, a great place to work, but really evolving towards cities, enabling cities to become learning cities so that they can use their data much, much more effectively to create a place where people want to live and can improve how they live. Okay.
Thanks, Joanna. Thanks for, I know you have to run to your flight now. Thanks for sharing the view. You did not really go into details. Who is TM Forum? So you could say it's the UN of the big telecom and ICT providers. You have a footprint together of $2 trillion turnover a year. So I mean, it is really the, let's say, the supply side view on things. So it's quite nice to have, as we have heard before, the industry players, the supply side players who want to play on the terms of the cities and communities. So thank you for also bringing, let's say, this ambition of joining forces. And thank you, Paul, for sitting in here. Right. So in fact, so if you remember the MIM on ecosystem transaction management, so what are the terms and what are the mechanisms we use to exchange actually in synchronicity is modeled on the TM Forum business ecosystem APIs and implemented using the reference implementation is the FIWARE implementation. So maybe Ulrich, you could come up and tell us even more concretely how could you within the FIWARE ecosystem then make a practical application of these visions, so making it all the way down to the operational side. Thank you again for coming straight out of India.
Yeah. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Martin, thank you for inviting me, and I'm quite lucky that I could say that I think we are pretty much in line with the two speakers we had before and the messages. And you heard during the day, I think in several sessions about FIWARE, and I would like to give you a short update where we are and what are we planning to do together with several stakeholders. And I think that will be an exciting idea, an exciting project, which will more in detail be described then by Shigehiro, who will be the last speaker today. In FIWARE, we are dealing around context information. So context information describing what's happening around us, how is the city feeling, what's happening, when, where, why. And what we see is that more and more things, more and more information are getting connected, and everything that can be connected will be connected in the future. Anything that can be transferred into data sets and digitized will be digitized in the future. And finally, based on this data, everything that can be automated will be automated. We saw this years ago in the area of industry, talking about smart industry, and we will see that in the future more and more also in office processes. Do we need accountants in the future, or will it be automated? How will it be in the city hall? So a lot of changes, but to be able to do these changes, to implement them, it is important to get access to data. And today, very often, data are still organized in silos. Joann also used the word silo before. Silos due to technical reasons, because interfaces don't fit to each other, data models don't fit to each other, or simply to organizational reasons, because organizations, companies don't want to share their data or don't trust in data. And we heard it, for those of you who have been in this room in the last session, that data sovereignty, data usage control are very important basic functionalities and ingredients to make our digital world really happen. And our mission as FIWARE is to break down the silos, to make data available for smart solutions. And here one slide of what is FIWARE. It is a framework of open source, so we are talking about open source software, a framework of open source platform components to access and manage heterogeneous context information through open APIs. And this open API in the FIWARE world is called NGSI, and it has been adopted by ETSI to become a formal standard, not only to be a de facto standard, which it is in several countries, but also a formal standard. And then we have a lot of software building blocks which are used by the ecosystem to create smart city platforms, to create smart solutions. And the main component of this software building blocks, we call them generic enablers. The main generic enabler is the FIWARE context broker. And all of these building blocks are organized around an architecture. You see here on the slide simplified architecture, and on the next page a more detailed architecture. Again, the context broker in the center. At the bottom, or southbound, NGSI-based interfaces to get access to data coming from sensor, which are deployed in IoT networks, to other IT systems, to social media, to all the different sources of data and context information, and on top, functionality to process, analyze, and manage, visualize this data. All these software components, these generic enablers, are available for everyone, free of charge. It is open source. And we even provide a data center infrastructure. We call it FIWARE Lab. It's a FIWARE Lab node network. Actually, we have 14 of these data center nodes or FIWARE Lab nodes worldwide, 10 of them in Europe, one in Brazil, one in Senegal, one in Mexico. The second largest one is in Mexico, and the latest one created by NSG and opened last year in Noida, near Delhi in India. And again, this can be used by everyone free of charge, as long as it are pilots, test beds. If a FIWARE-based solution then goes into productive usage, you either have to switch to FIWARE cloud provider. You can also go to a public cloud provider like Amazon. FIWARE is also running on Amazon. Or you can install it in your own data center, because still a lot of cities having their own data centers, their own IT companies, and like to operate their IT systems themselves. Some achievements since we met here last year, so during last year. A very important one for us on the left side, the core component of FIWARE, the context broker, became a CEF building block. CEF stands for Connecting Europe Facility, one of the large programs of the European Commission to make the digital single market of the European Union reality. And so far there were 5 of these CEF building blocks. All our local ID cards are using and supporting eID, or for example e-signature. That are some example of the existing ones. And the FIWARE context broker has been elected by all member states to become the CEF building block number 6. Now promoted by the European Commission to the member states to be used when creating digital solutions. And on the right side, this open API of FIWARE, NGSI, was a basis for the standardization of ETSI. ETSI created an industry specification group for context information management, and the head of that is sitting here, Lindsay. Yeah, you've been driving this, Lindsay Frost from NEC. driving this working group within ETSI to define the standard for context information management, starting within smart cities, and this is called NGSI LD. LD because it's also supporting linked data principles. A very, very important milestone to harmonize the interfaces and to harmonize the way how to get access to context information. FIWARE is in the meantime adopted globally. A lot of the so far OASC, what is the actual figure now, Martin? I'm using always 120. Now some new ones joined. Do you have a new official figure yet, or 125? So I will change the slide in the future. 125 cities within OASC, a lot of them using FIWARE, being committed to use FIWARE and GSI as their standard API, but also other cities around the globe starting to create their smart city solution or their smart cities based on FIWARE technology. Not all of them are OASC members yet. For example, Montevideo, I've been in Uruguay 2 months ago, very impressed about what they did in the meantime. NSG won in the meantime the first 4 Japanese cities. And our first member, the first member of the FIWARE Foundation from India, a company called Mobilepedia, won a contract paid by the World Bank in India to create a shared service smart city platform for India. Not for the big 100 smart cities. You might have heard of the 100 Smart Cities program in India, $15 billion, not million, $15 billion. So each city gets $150 million to create and to realize their smart city. 100 cities in India out of 6,000 in India, and there are in addition 600,000 villages, so it's really a large country, but it is an immense program the government has started there in India. We were founded a bit more than 2 years ago as a FIWARE Foundation after the FIWARE technology has been created in a PPP of the European Union with several European companies, and founded by 4 companies. In the meantime, we are more than 200 members, where Mobilepedia, which I mentioned just is one of. And by the way, the latest member, which is not yet on here, is a farmers organization from Togo, as you've been talking a bit about Africa. So from Togo in Africa, and they decided to build their smart farming platform based on FIWARE technology. So this as an update, and these achievements over the last year are more and more recognized by analysts. Here a market analysis of PAC, Pierre Audin Consultants from France. They did an IoT benchmark for Europe, analyzed some 120 IoT platforms which are relevant in Europe, and in 7 segments. One of the segments was smart cities, and out of these 7 segments, only 12 providers made it into the best-in-class ranking, and FIWARE is the only open source platform in this list of 12 best-in-class platforms. That is an update. And now coming to the project idea we are developing. We have been asked by the World Economic Forum's Center for the Fourth Industrial Revolution in Japan. They are involved in the preparation of the next G20 meeting, which will be in Osaka end of June. And they asked us whether we would be willing to work on a sustainable smart city coalition. And we very soon got the support of, on the one side, the European Commission, and on the other side also from NIST, the National Institute for Standards and Technology. And we then joined forces with 2 other organizations which are here in the room, and the one is TM Forum. And Joann mentioned it before. We started end of last year the joint collaboration program, which is called the Frontrunner Cities Initiative, mainly to define common data models in smart cities. So a common agreed data model for smart parking, for smart waste management, for smart lighting, and so on, to further increase and enable the exchange of applications from one city to the other. Having agreed on the API, knowing how to transfer data, we are now working on which data to transfer and to exchange. And that's the core of this joint collaboration program with TM Forum. And we are also working quite close together with OASC since the beginning. And so also OASC agreed to join this initiative. And finally, coming back to these three initiators, we agreed to join our forces in defining one smart application and to work in this combination of the three organizations, TM Forum, OASC, and FIWARE, to make this happen in at least one city of each of the G20 countries. Knowing that there are just 19 G20 countries and the European Union, which doesn't have a real capital, I think. Yeah? Brussels is not the capital of, no, it's, I think the European Union has not a capital, but anyhow. Therefore, there's always a guest in the G20 meeting, because it normally belongs in there, which is Spain. So then it are again 20 countries, and this is this Sustainable Smart Cities Coalition approach. We are selecting actually one application, and we are the most prominent candidate is a smart parking solution. Following the approach to use NGSI as a basis, as API, and using the data model we are developing, or we have developed in that case already together with TM Forum. So using really standards, making replicability easy, and our target is to show this, that it is easy, that it is possible, that it can be realized until June in each of the participating cities. And this approach is open. It is open. It is not only based on FIWARE. So precondition is same data model, same API, but it can also be realized by closed solutions, by other providers. We will drive it from the FIWARE side, but also it is open for others. Yeah? This means, as I said, common APIs, common data models, and in a FIWARE-based approach, even the additional benefits of open source-based implementations. Basic components are free of charge. A big community of developers is behind it to maintain and further develop this software building blocks. A large group of startups, SMEs, and global corporates are providing or creating solutions using these software components and providing it to the end users. And finally, by this approach, we are able to provide the lowest cost of ownership for the end users and avoiding the so-called vendor lock-in effect. Because this is not only open source, it is also open APIs and open data models. Yeah? That is very important. And we started to collect cities joining us in that program. And as Martin said, yesterday I've been in India presenting also this approach during a smart city conference. And immediately I had 4 candidates from India. And the most promising one I put on here is Pune as a proposed city. So what I did is, or what we did in this spreadsheet, we put the capital of each of the countries in there. We put in there which is the largest OASC city in the countries. Maybe I have to check now the new cities, whether there are some in there, which we should also consider. Then candidates, and finally confirmed to make it happen. This will be our program in this first half year of 2019 until the G20 meeting. If you'd like to learn more about FIWARE, we're doing 2 summits a year. Next one will be in Genoa in May of this year, 21st and 22nd. More than welcome to join us as we are participating here. OASC always is participating in our event, so maybe we'll even do a bit more this time. We are working on an idea on this. Yeah, and that's FIWARE, the open source platform for our smart digital future. Thank you very much.
Thanks for this. I'll just turn this down. Thanks for the very, let's say, concrete, also the concreteness of what you do and for continuing this work. Maybe some of you know, I think there's several, of course, things to pick up here, but picking up on you know, what is smart cities? You had the image of the silos, Ulrich. Smart cities as a silo, which was traditionally, but you remember from the morning, smart city communities is not a silo. It's all of this. So one thing maybe to pick out and just to reflect off of, you had this radar, this ranking of what are the prominent global IoT platforms that serve smart city communities. Some of you may have been in the de-risking funding session today, where Bas Boersma from TASK, the Academy for Smarter Communities, was with Dorte Nielsen from Eurocities. So Bas and TASK is the training partner of OASC, and to kick off a conversation about what do you need to learn? Well, in this little report that he presented for the first time, nice to have a premiere here, also globally, for this nice little reflection on the statistics. Statistic point number 1. In 2018, smart cities overcame manufacturing as the main deployment area for IoT platforms. In revenue, still manufacturing a little bit beyond. It's the double of smart cities. But if you see the curve, if you see the growth curve also that we see in the statistics from UN and so on, you can imagine what's happening there, right? So just think about this kind of market that's being shared. So bringing these actors around the dynamics. We're really looking at this hockey stick of already now deployments, and then later, yes, the commercial aspects. So linking to the World Economic Forum and the Center for the Fourth Industrial Revolution, Japan. Shige, I think it is very timely. First of all, I think it's very nice of you to come. I think it's also very timely to have this conversation about how does this impact, how does this look from well, not just an industrial revolution take, but from an economic, a world economic perspective. So thanks for being with us.
I'm going to turn this down a little bit more from Ulrich. So thank you very much for having me here. I'm Shigehiro Muraki from the World Economic Forum Center for the Fourth Industrial Revolution. It's a tongue twister. Japan. So quick question. Who has ever crossed the red light when no cars were there? Of course. Or who has ever got a speed ticket? Okay, so the bad news is we're filled with criminals here, but the good news is that everybody will be interested in my presentation because our organization is focused on changing the government rules for in a human-centric way. So who we are, we call it the curve for the fourth industrial revolution. So right now everybody knows that we're in the era of the fourth industrial revolution, blockchain, AI, all the technologies are changing our lives every day. However, when we decide on frameworks, we take many time and we gather information, but when we actually change the framework, it's too late. So we have to be very, very agile in making the framework. So many of you know the World Economic Forum, who is very famous for the Davos meeting, which is going to be held next week in Davos, Switzerland. And right now, I'm from the organization called the World Economic Forum Center for the Fourth Industrial Revolution. So this is an organization anchored in San Francisco, basically to actually change the governance and bridge the governance gap between technology and the current status, because many governance frameworks were made from the past, and when we try to implement the technology for the fourth industrial revolution, it doesn't fit, it doesn't work. So we have 9 focus areas: digital trade, drones, AI, IoT, smart cities, 4R for the worth, precision medicine, blockchain, mobility, and data policy in San Francisco. And how it works is that, so basically, this is example in Rwanda. So maybe you know the blood shipping drones in Rwanda. So where in Rwanda, it's a very, very beautiful country with many mountains, however, not much hospitals. So women were dying from losing blood while giving birth because they weren't able to get the blood type that they need in time. So the Rwanda government partnered with the World Economic Forum Center for the Fourth Industrial Revolution, which we call it the C4R in San Francisco, and the drone team flew to Rwanda, and they came up with an idea of sending blood with drones. So when it took 8 hours or a day, by flying it using drones, it takes about 30 minutes or an hour. But the problem was that they had, of course, the traditional aerial law that has to have permission, give permission for each airplane, which is, there's one pilot per plane, and there's some kind of equipment necessary, but that doesn't fit for drones because, of course, one pilot is piloting several drones, 1 to N, and it will be very difficult to permit each drone because there will be many drones flying all over the place. So what they did is that they co-designed and actually implement the first drone law in the world in 4 months, and they're saving about 10 women every day since that. This happened last January. So when you consider the impact towards a more developed or large country, then it's quite huge. So this is how we work. So we partner with a drone company called Zipline, and they were making the drones. So again, the center, the C4IR, co-designed the policy and actually implemented. So right now in Japan, we have, this is the Center for the Fourth Industrial Revolution. Japan is the first center outside of San Francisco, and it's quite unique because it's a joint venture between the Japanese government and the World Economic Forum. And we have 3 focus areas, which is 1, mobility, and 2, healthcare data policy, and 3, which is smart cities, because when you gather data and you want to implement the fourth industrial revolution technology, all roads lead to smart cities. So this is how we are connected with smart cities, and we were introduced to OASC and FIWARE Foundation and all the partners here. And this is the exciting project that we have for this year. It's one of the work streams in our project. So we're trying to make a sustainable smart city coalition that have 3 principles with the system interoperability, and make a data governance framework that ensures data portability, and the Green Financing Mechanism for Local Digital Infrastructure, the CDOS. And this is the schedule for 2019 when we would like to leverage the opportunity of Japan hosting the G20 and the B20 and the U20, which I will explain. The B20 is a meeting before the G20 of the business large players of the G20 countries. This is going to be in March. And the U20, which is the urban 20, which is formed from the mayors of the large cities, including the capitals in the G20 countries. So as Japan is hosting these three large events, and the center is in a very unique position to cooperate with the organizers of these three meetings, which is for B20, it's Keidamre, it's a large consortium, which is led by the chairman of Hitachi, who is our chairman as well, and the U20 is led by the Tokyo Municipal Government, which we are communicating with closely. And G20 is, of course, organized by the Japanese government. So again, we would like to leverage this opportunity to form a smart city coalition. And of course, that's how Ulrich tied us with FIWARE. Not only FIWARE, but we're open to many partners. And this is going to be very exciting, and we'll be working with OASC, and we would like to, we're expecting the cities in OASC to be the pillars, one of the pillars of the Smart City Coalition, especially from Europe. And right now, we're working with China, because we have another center in China after Japan, and India as well, and of course San Francisco, who's and led by the first Chief Innovation Officer of New York City. So we have America, China, India, Japan, and the European friends on board, and we're trying to make that coalition make a agenda that we can all agree on. And the last slide, this is an example of what we're, the mechanism, what we're thinking of, data portability. And we think the smart city is a container for a data exchange model when people can use their own data for themselves and for the social benefit based on their own consent. Of course, in Europe, we have the GDPR, and in the United States, GAFA is owning all the data, and in China, of course, the government is gathering the data. But we are, in Japan and India, thinking of a model, a new model, that we can use our data based on our consent. So it's a new data exchange marketplace that will be one of the core of the Smart City Coalition that we're thinking of. So again, thank you for your time. And again, we would like to expect everybody in this room to be the pillars of the Smart City Coalition to move forward. So if you have any questions, please contact me freely. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we have 20 minutes to reflect a little bit on the things we heard. I think, Paul, you should be given the opportunity to have a voice here as well, not just let Joann speak for you. Any reflections now hearing here what the presenters have brought forward? So maybe first your role in the TM Forum, and then some reflections on this.
I'm not sure it's, oh, there we go. How about that? So I just want to say first, some of you know me, but I started out in a city in Bristol where we did a lot around software-defined networks and virtualized networks, and then found myself involved with the UK government setting up UK 5G. It's a delight to be out of the UK today and be here in Brussels. just to join some civilization. And I feel ashamed and embarrassed on behalf of my fellow country, and I'd like to apologize. But now I've got that out of the way.
You're being recorded.
Maybe we'll remain after all. But now I've got that out of the way, I just had to get it out of my chest. It's great. At TM Forum, I'm the Chief Marketing Officer, I suppose I should say that. And we've been working in smart cities for 5 years or more, and all around the world. And the thing that's super exciting for me, being here today, seeing particularly the synchronicity work, absolutely fabulous to see how it's moving from no longer particular excitement about open data, which is, you know, historic open data transparency. Yeah, okay, it's good. Now into real-time IoT and even beginning to think about federation between cities. Fantastic. And the amount of work that's gone on, I think, in synchronicity in particular was the one that got me most inspired, actually, in what I've heard today. But the challenge that we get to next is governance around data. And how do we manage actually not just silos of data coming off different services or different parts of IoT, but how can we build a data lake and a data platform and then govern that? Whose data is it? And that's where what we've done in the manifesto is bring private sector technology together with public sector responsibility. And there's always going to be lots of tension. So I'd sort of like to say, when you've got public sector, you've got accountability and democracy, and you've got good things like inclusion, and bad days, you've got elections and control. And then in private sector, you've got innovation, creativity, customers, it's great. On bad days, you've got quarterly earnings, and you've got profit, and you've got, you know, that motivation. The next step is, how do you bring those two together and be honest about the motivations driving both? And they're deep-seated, and it's quite hard to bring two differently motivated groups together at that scale. But what you see happening here in this forum is the progress year on year is tantalizing, to be honest. From hobby projects to increasing projects of scale that are beginning to federate between cities. And you can see that within the next 5 years or so, we will actually have cracked this and moved beyond all doing our own thing to actually getting to some shared standards and shared ways of doing things. And so I think the most interesting place to get to next is data governance. And how do we go about managing data whilst acknowledging the importance of individuals in that, but actually the need to do some sharing and corporate sharing of data for the use of the city. And so I'm excited also to think that now we get to play with the World Economic Forum, to play with OASC, to play with the ITU and FIWARE. This actually is beginning to become pretty interesting and might take us towards those standard sustainable development goals, which are obviously exciting for all of us.
Right. Thanks for that. Yeah, let's also give you a clap. So maybe if you could pass the baton to Alex. So we talk about data governance. Please ready yourselves to pose your questions. We can take questions after some initial reflections here. So anything you want to ask the world, it's right here in front of you, except Joann, which unfortunately had to leave. So Alex, as you're a global regulator, you're a global development organization, you're a global facilitator of the dynamics that we just heard about now. So any reflections on what can be done on a global, so your examples were very localized, while yet you're a global facilitator as an organization. Any reflection on how to link the very concrete on the ground with something that has a global scale? I mean, the ITU regulates satellite orbits, radio frequency spectrum, right? I mean, that kind of scarce resources in this space. How does that link to the priorities on the ground, which, as you said, are different?
Okay, I'll take the example of Shigehiro. Did I pronounce that properly? Okay. Yeah, let's take this bottle, okay? You can put water in this bottle. The water is, let's consider the water to be data, until we get to a point where we can also enable developing countries and all those who currently do not have the rights to their data, until we get to a point where they can also be manufacturing bottles, there would always be a certain level of control to their data. So what we are trying to do, we are trying to go down these technologies which are used by those who now control the data which we talk about. They have to be also in the hands of those who are going to be generating. So we have to bring access to the technology to a point where it is not just a few powerful groups of companies who are providing the containers for data. That's only one aspect, but it's one important aspect, because even if you put the rules to govern them, if my water is in a bottle that you control, how much control do I actually have as to what you do with the water? So that's why we are launching programs like the incubator. We want to go down to those technologies. We want to make them available to those who are going to develop the systems, and together with the development of the systems, they put in place the framework for data governance.
So, thanks for the very nice and concrete. So immediately the idea is clear. If you control the water but not the bottle, how much control do you have? Perfect. So maybe I can ask you, Ulrich. This is the middle microphone. Perfect, you're in the middle. So Paul is saying, oh, great, synchronicity and pilots. So we just see how now they're rolling out next month, 39 of them. So you're basically doing synchronicity piloting for the G20. Is that it? I mean, it's the same mindset. So you have a template and then you just reuse it.
It is exactly the same mindset. And what's important for me, and that's why I like that much this program together with TM Forum, it is implementation driven. We had from the very beginning 11 cities joining us, most of them OASC cities, but also some other cities which are not yet OASC members. And it is important to bring all the technology we have at hand in the meantime, to bring this to reality and to bring it into the cities and to make it happen. And I've been impressed. Yesterday I had a meeting with the World Bank yesterday in Delhi, and they showed me one project they did and they financed in India, in the southeastern part of India, where and coming to your, who had the drones example? Who had the drones? You had the drones. Also a drones project, autonomously flying drones in 160 cities, enhancing satellite images of the city. They are flying once a month with drones over the whole city, creating 3D images of the city. And out of these 3D models, the building and ground tax is automatically calculated. And they are rocketing the tax income in these cities, because there was in the past a lot of fraud, and people were not that honest with declaring their tax. And that is an example for me where digital technology is improving also the income of the states. Yeah? Or one of the cities which joined us in this program is Montevideo, the capital of Uruguay. They learned about FIWARE in that case a bit more than 2 years ago in Barcelona at the Smart City Expo World Congress, asked a local company to build up FIWARE know-how, and using these building blocks I explained or showed before to create their smart city platform. In the meantime, they have 450 intersections in the city with their traffic lights on the platform. They have sensors measuring the traffic flow. They know how many people are in the buses because they have an electronic ticket system which is connected to the platform. They know whether the buses are in time or not, and actually are working on a solution that full buses, so many people are affected, which are behind schedule, get green light at the intersections to allow them to catch up with their original schedule. A solution I've not really seen in Europe in that case. And that's in South America, in Uruguay. Yeah, and so we have this technology at hand, and also in this group here, we should work on bringing this technology to reality to increase the quality of life of the citizens in our cities. And one remark I forgot to mention during my presentation, if there are city representatives here in this room who would like to join our joint program in preparation for the G20 meeting, please don't hesitate to contact us, and we are now starting the phase of bringing cities on board to make it reality.
Thank you, Ulrich. We had a Danish politician who ran for the Danish parliament, and his promises were like far-fetched. One of them was, you know, have the wind in the back when you bike. He want more wind in the back, right? So you don't get the wind in front. Of course, he could not promise that, but they can that in Montevideo, right? It's a little bit like getting, you know, the wind in your back. Actually, in Aarhus, we have green preferred lights for bikes when you have the NSC chips on your, so you get priority actually when you speed down toward the intersection. Just saying, built on the same technology actually. So I will now pose a short question to Shige, but please prepare your questions. If you could just raise your hand. I don't know, Davor, if you could grab one of the mics and run to whoever raises the hand. We take a few questions to the panel. So Shige, what about this idea of the, you know, the production being, I mean, so we saw in the standardization session how the you know, the conveyor belt and this like mass production of things was, you know, behind the Industrial Revolution in the mass manufacturing way. So how's this going to impact the economy? Do we even know what will happen when, you know, these technologies are not just producing bottles, but bottle factories and, you know, becoming more or less mandated to even build infrastructure? Then do we understand? I saw your hockey sticks there going both ways. How do we measure or predict the impact on the economy?
That's a good question, and my answer is we cannot.
Okay.
Because, well, actually that was a question that I had when I started this project. How do we measure the impact, or what will be a KPI or ROI for a smart city? But through the discussion with all the experts, right now my conclusion is that there is no KPI. There was no KPI for making a car.
Right.
There was no KPI for electricity. So I think the people here are the first penguins to actually jump into this large project. So I think we have to make the way and to believe in this way, because the usage of the data itself, there's so many ways, but we can't predict one way or another. So answering your question, it may be a little bit a cheating answer, but I think we cannot.
Right.
Yes.
So it's basically a leap of faith, but I would say probably, you know, coming from the cities and communities side, the view would be, well, actually the well-being of people would be a good KPI, so at least if it doesn't drop.
Yes, and just want to, so the approach, I think, not learning from the past, but learning from the peers, because there are so many similar activities in all of the world, especially when my impression for the smart city is that it's very localized, of course, because of all the implementation. So I think the learning from each other, because we're facing the same challenges and going towards the same direction. So I think that's the only way and the best way to have the whole goal.
Right. So learning, so each do their pilots and their learnings, what worked and what didn't work, and then bring that together. Maybe something similar works in one of the G20 countries, but not in others, and understanding why. I would actually like to invite the audience to provide a couple of questions. Anyone? First question here. Come up the hand. Yes, please. Say who you are and where you're from, and give a shot. Maybe we take 2 questions if we have, just and pool them together. Would that be okay? So please.
Good afternoon. So my name is Cristina Martinez. I work for the European Commission in the digital policy for smart cities and smart mobility and so on and so forth. I'd like to take the opportunity of having inspiring speakers coming from all over the globe to provide us with their views on data ownership and the ethics around. I mean, you suggested that indeed there are different perspectives about what we could do with data, but I like the very fact that the smart cities comes with a perspective that is citizen-driven. And so I would like to know whether you discuss at global level or whether there are fora or whether you think you could use your fora to engage into a global conversation about data privacy, data ownership, because if data is the new oil, you know that oil can be used for good and less good purposes. So perhaps shouldn't we start a discussion where we would be engaging into fundamental ethical principles on what we would do with that data to avoid falling into the trap of a surveillance society everywhere, more or less. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's such a big one, so let's start with that. Of course, those of you who were seeing the track on trust, I mean, heard Thomas from Amsterdam, who have joined the Coalition for Digital Rights for Cities, right? So I think there's a lot of stuff going on already, but maybe a quick, I think you all mentioned this aspect actually. So if we could take a quick reflection from your side, and then please prepare one more question if you have. Raise your hand, wave vigorously, because otherwise we will close and go and have a drink. But I don't know from which side to start. Maybe Shige, so you emphasized exactly the policy making as a key instrument actually to be able to exploit the opportunities of technology. So can you address more specifically then how ethics, how privacy, how the rights, the citizen, let's say, integrity, protection, even maybe cultural integrity must be reflected? Or where do we start the work? Where do you start the work?
That's a very good question. Thank you very much. So ethics will be very, very important, and the consent of each individual will be the basis of the data exchange. So for instance, we can have smart contracts that will have the consent tied to the data itself. So somebody can agree that you can use this data for public good for free, but however, if you want to use this, a pharmaceutical company wants to use my data for making new medicine, then you have to pay me a certain amount of money. So those kind of consent combined with the smart contract blockchain technology, that'll be one solution. But again, ethics will be deferred by country to country, and of course the current regulations will differ as well. So I think starting a conversation of data sharing and cross-border data sharing, that's the first very important first step, but we need to be more creative in terms of the localization and agreement from country to country. So that's my view for now. But again, we need more of a international conversation of the data policy, because it's very, very, very different from country to country.
Ulrich?
Maybe to add on this, the right on my data is a prerequisite to increase further the acceptance for digital solutions, at least in part of the people. My kids, they nearly don't care about, I have to say, about their data and what's happening to their data. But that's not true for all people. And in the meantime, we have functionality available under the title Data Sovereignty to allow the owner of data to technically enforce what someone who gets to his data is able to do with it. In a smart contract, I agree with someone and I have to trust that the person applies to the smart contract. But we have in the meantime functionality to really technically enforce this. So for example, I give someone the 3D model of this microphone and allow him to have it printed on a 3D printer 5 times. And after the 5th print, this data set is not accessible for him or her anymore. And that's what we call data sovereignty. And for me, this is a prerequisite for the further deployment of digital solutions and the acceptance when talking about smart cities of the citizens with regards to these solutions.
Paul, you want?
I'd like to thank the person who asked the question from the Commission, saying thank you to the Commission for making it clear that data belongs to the individual in the GDPR. First point, I think it's very important globally that there's been a big regulation that says data belongs to an individual. If you go to India, it's very hard to have an identity. For many millions of people, they have no identity at all. So there's a phenomenal project being running in India, which I'm sure some folks here know more about, Adaman, where they've used iris scanning and fingerprint scanning on nearly the whole population now. So this is an audaciously large project to use biometrics to give people a digital identity. I don't know if you read, but the next problem is that the data is then being sold on the black market for not very much. And so you have now a massive problem of identity theft going on. So we're sort of moving closer to the idea it belongs to the person, but then the identity challenge is quite a big one. If you think about the challenge of transport in cities, when I go in my car, my journey is super important to me. I want to do it, but I'm traffic to everybody else. And so for that way, we need to work out the idea that how do I have data brokerage? So my data is my data, but I need to create an automation system that allows me to give my data off to others in the public commons where there's some good coming back to me. So my car journey becomes known to the city because there's benefit for a transport system. My health data might be known to the doctor because there's benefit to me from the health system. And I think that data brokerage will come as a whole thing in life. There'll be commercial ways that we consent to when we give off data, and we will automate that. I think we haven't got to that data brokerage concept yet, but I think it's not manageable to do manually, so I think we'll all be giving it off, and that there will be a whole, commercial element of data brokerage that's coming.
Thanks, Paul, and maybe that's a very good sort of segue. But maybe you can use the microphone on your side, because then the sound technician actually knows which one to. So this is a good, back to the satellite orbits and the radio spectrum and so on. I mean, so this is really a global concern, right? But with very, as Shige said, very, very different local needs. So how do you even approach this from a regulatory? You cannot roll out European legislation or even Japanese legislation in the world and just accept. I mean, Facebook is trying, right, to roll out standards from that point of view, but it needs to be localized in another way. How do you even approach it?
Yeah, I think you said the key word here. There are issues which, even though they are discussed at a global level, they can only be solved at a local level. Because, let me just give you an example. In Switzerland, you go to a parking lot, you take a ticket, you put it in your pocket. When you are leaving that parking lot, you go to some place, you pay, and then you put it in the machine, it opens the gate, and you leave. One thing which is clear here, there's no relationship between the parking ticket and me. You see that? I went to Wuxi and went to one of the parkings, and the parking just opened. And the colleague who was driving me parked the car, and at the end he scanned some QR code on the wall with his WeChat, and then he went into the car. And on leaving, the parking opened again. I said, okay. Here I see that your license plate was read by something. A record was stored. You go and then you scan, you enter the same license plate, the system updates the record that this person has paid. So you are leaving now, the system reads the license plate, checks the record, and opens the gate. I said, but a lot of data about you is stored. You say, I don't really care. What I'm trying to say here is that We can have global concerns, but we have to look at the local implementation of that, because I've spent a lot of my years going into countries and deploying technologies, 25, 30 years almost. And in some cases, I have to understand, more than 100 countries, I have to understand the context within which the community considers what is shareable and what belongs to me. So this is a challenge that we have to face as a global community. We have to understand those aspects which are to be looked at a global level, and those aspects which need to take into account the customs, the relationship that people have with their government. Do they trust their government to have data which belongs to them? That's not a universal principle. So I think here we need to be able to identify those aspects which are going to be global, some things like, the right for people to decide what should happen to their data. That right could also mean they don't care if the government has access to the data. I was in India, I was in Fiji with those who launched this initiative, the one for Dr. Kama of India, the one for Identify. And I had a lot of discussions with him because we're talking about DFS, digital financial services, and we had to come up with this agreement. And those who gave the biometric data, it's not possible, it's not very easy to do something like that outside context like India, because people are going to say, who is going to control this data? So it's a very tricky thing. We need to look at each community and look at the customs and try to understand what are the things that people are going to accept. It's not going to be the same rule. GDPR is not going to work for everybody. It's going to work for the Europeans, but it might not be acceptable for other parts. We as a global organization, we have to take into account these sensitivities. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I think, so unless somebody wants to be between the audience, the speakers, and a drink, maybe this is very good. Thank you, Christina, for bringing this obviously key topic, and I would say also hot topic on the plate. I think there's a lot of opportunity also to discuss how then to concretize this, because one thing I should say is some universal principles, they have to be translated into policy and into technology. So I hear that also as an invitation to have this conversation in Europe in a global context, and certainly on the ground, bringing it back to cities and communities which can actually differ within very, very local geography anyway. Please give a big hand to the closing panelists. Alex, Joann, Ulrich, Shige, and Paul, thank you very much. Now there's a reception outside, and during the reception you will get a presentation of the IoT week, which will have the conference dinner in a very, very special place, which will put on the ground, actually build a small community, a small society, making these conversations about everything from trust to does it actually work together. A profound thank you, everyone, for coming, for staying. Please come and have a drink with us. See you next year. Thanks.